Nashville, 2015. A cramped storage unit, the smell of dust and forgotten dreams. Alex Orbison's hands trembled as he held the master tapes. His father's voice, Roy Orbison, the legendary Big O, was trapped inside these reels. But these weren't just any recordings, this was a complete album, a masterpiece, lost for 46 years, and it had almost been sold for pocket change at a storage auction. This is the story of how a music legend's darkest hour became his most powerful artistic statement, and how it nearly disappeared forever. Picture this. You're going through your dead father's archives, expecting to find the usual suspects, outtakes, demos, maybe a forgotten B-side. Instead, you discover something impossible. 30 unreleased songs, all from 1969, all professionally recorded. That's exactly what happened to Alex Orbison in 2015. He wasn't sleeping. The numbers didn't add up. His father's MGM contract demanded 3 albums per year. Alex could account for 2 releases in 1969, but where was the third? It kept me awake at night, Alex would later confess, because 30 songs isn't a few leftover tracks. 30 songs is a treasure trove that shouldn't exist. But here's where the story gets darker, much darker. To understand what Alex discovered, you need to know about the hell Roy Orbison was living through in 1969. Just months before these mysterious recordings, Roy's world had literally gone up in flames. September 15th, 1968. Roy was touring in England when the phone call came. His house in Hendersonville, Tennessee, was burning. His 2 eldest sons, Roy Jr., 11 years old, and Tony, just 6, were trapped inside. They didn't make it out. Imagine that phone call. You're thousands of miles away, performing for crowds who see you as this almost mythical figure, this voice that can shatter hearts with a single note. And suddenly, your own heart is the one that's shattered. Your children are gone. Your home is ash. The music world expected Roy Orbison to disappear, to retreat into silent grief like any normal human being would. Hell, it's what he'd done before when his first wife Claudette died in a motorcycle accident 2 years earlier. But Roy Orbison wasn't normal, and what he did next would create one of the most haunting albums ever recorded. 4 months after burying his sons, Roy walked into a Nashville recording studio, not to dabble, not to try writing a few sad songs. He was there to work, every single day. His son Alex later described it perfectly. The studio became his sanctuary. It was a place to go during the day just to have an excuse to brush your teeth and shower. Think about that. This man, who just experienced every parent's worst nightmare, was using music as life support. But he wasn't just surviving. He was creating something extraordinary. The songs poured out of him, raw, devastating, beautiful. Some were love letters to his dead wife Claudette. Others were promises to Barbara, the woman he'd met just weeks before the fire. It was like watching someone bleed onto tape. But here's the twist that makes this story absolutely insane. MGM Records took this complete, finished album, Roy's blood, sweat, and tears pressed into vinyl, and buried it. Not because it was bad, because it was too good, too real, too raw. Picture the label executives listening to the title track, One of the Lonely Ones. Roy's voice, cracking with pain, singing, "I'm sick, I'm tired, I'm uninspired, I'd rather be dead and gone." This wasn't radio-friendly. This was a man's soul split open for the world to hear. And in 1969, that terrified them. So they locked it away, created what Alex Orbison called a logjam of releases. Too many albums, not enough calendar space. The easiest solution? Bury the most difficult one. For 46 years, this masterpiece sat in darkness, waiting. Here's where our story becomes absolutely unbelievable. Corporate mergers, MGM gets swallowed by Universal. Paperwork gets lost. Suddenly, the master tapes to Roy Orbison's lost album end up in a Nashville storage unit. Not a climate-controlled archive. Not a secure vault. A regular storage unit that normal people rent to store their old furniture. And when the bills stopped getting paid, everything went up for auction. Some random stranger bought the lot for practically nothing. Imagine their shock when they found professional master tapes labeled Roy Orbison. They could have sold them to bootleggers, could have held them for ransom. Instead, they did something extraordinary. They called Barbara Orbison. One phone call saved a masterpiece from oblivion. One decent human being prevented cultural history from disappearing into private collections or landfills. When Alex finally heard the complete album, he couldn't believe what his father had created. This wasn't the broken man the world expected. This was an artist at his absolute peak, channeling unimaginable pain into transcendent beauty. The opening track, You'll Never Walk Alone, starts as a whisper and builds into a gospel-powered promise that gives you chills. Sweet Memories is so nakedly autobiographical about Claudette that it's almost impossible to listen to without tears. But the real gut punch, the final track, I Will Always, was recorded specifically for Barbara, the woman who would become his second wife. Roy was simultaneously mourning his past and embracing his future, recording his grief and his hope on the same album. Critics who finally heard it in 2015 were stunned. This wasn't just another posthumous cash grab. This was potentially Roy's greatest artistic achievement. Stephen Thomas Erlewine called it stronger and more adventurous than anything else from that era. For decades, the story went like this. Roy Orbison suffered unspeakable tragedy and retreated into silence. The man in black became a ghost, disappearing from public life. But that was a lie. The discovery of one of the lonely ones proves that Roy never stopped fighting. 4 months after losing his children, he wasn't hiding in his bedroom. He was in the studio every day, turning his pain into art, creating an album so powerful that it scared his own record label. This is the real Roy Orbison. Not a victim of circumstance, but a warrior who used music as his weapon against despair. Think about all the masterpieces we've lost to time, all the books that burned in Alexandria, all the films that disintegrated in studio vaults, all the songs that were never recorded. One of the Lonely Ones was almost one of those losses, a complete artistic statement. Finished and perfect, nearly lost forever because of corporate bureaucracy and unpaid storage bills. But it survived. Because sometimes, against all odds, the universe conspires to preserve something beautiful. Roy Orbison's voice continues to echo from beyond the grave, not just in the hits we know, but in the masterpiece that almost vanished. His darkest hour became his greatest triumph. His silence was actually a roar that took 46 years for the world to hear. And that, more than any biography or documentary, tells you everything you need to know about the soul of Roy Orbison. The man who turned tragedy into transcendence, who found light in the deepest darkness, who proved that sometimes our greatest work comes from our greatest pain. The Big O never really left us. He was just waiting in the vault, ready to break our hearts one more time.